Well, hello, everybody. I hope you like our lip gloss. It took us a while to get ready. So, thank you for your patience. Happy Monday from us here at Aquarius Rising Africa. Please don't ever forget when you're looking for us to put Aquarius Rising Africa at the end, because it's occurred to me recently, a lot of people say they can't find, and we are being shadow banned, make no mistake about that, but they seem to think it's Aquarius Rising. If you're going to put Aquarius Rising in, you're going to find 10 million other things. So please make sure to add Aquarius Rising Africa, and now the Roman numeral 2 as well. So welcome to Mystery Magical Marvelous Monday from Morné, myself, Bryce, and Stephanie, all the way across the oceans. And as you can see, if you guys are following these two, they're gallivanting all over the oceans right now. I mean, I will follow you on Twitter. The two of you are seriously misbehaving. I so I want to be there.
I know. Well, if we had you guys with us, we could get into even more trouble.
Yeah.
Exactly. I hate it. I've got such FOMO.
I mean, you just teleport over here, both of you. And I know I swear the ocean, we're not as far apart from each other as we think we are. So go get you a paddle board and just start paddling.
I agree, actually. I agree. Soon we're going to be able to motorize our lilos or something.
Put a jetpack on and just do.
Exactly. Well,
I think I'll just work with my animal communication skills and amp that up and maybe get a whale to carry me there.
You could be Jonah.
That is better than a dragon. I think I'd rather ride a whale than a dragon. That is awesome. That is awesome. Get some. What do they have up in the northern cold areas with the dog sleds?
Oh, I did a rod racing, the sled dog.
But you get dolphins instead and just
dolphins or
dolphin sled.
Dolphin sleds. Just look back and forth. But yeah, no, I keep saying I cannot wait for all of us to be able, because and what part of what Stephanie and I are doing before we get into what we're going to talk about is, and we keep telling people this, like, look in your own backyard. Look in your own backyard, because the truth is out there. Listen to your gut. I know we were talking before we started filming that we were in Salem, Massachusetts, where the famous Salem witch trials allegedly happened. And both of us were like, nothing happened here. Mm-hmm. Nothing. It's a Disney World. It's a gift shop. As her son said, this is like a gift shop. But we're going to get into that later on, because we still have some more research to do to kind of look at our own suspicions of what actually happened and where it actually happened and why are they saying it's in one town when it's not. Obviously, very much not in that town. But anyway, we keep telling, just look in your own backyard, guys. Like, you will see signs of Tartaria. You will see signs of the truth everywhere. You can't hide the truth. The truth always comes out. It's taken us long enough. It's taken us long enough because we've all been brainwashed to an extent. And that is why we're going to do part 2 on the bite model again, because...
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I really enjoyed that conversation last night. Promise it wasn't last night, Stephanie. Last week with Stephanie about, when we were speaking about the bite model. Very, very interesting. I'm glad we're going to look into it more, because I think there's so much more we can chew into. So going into each of those specific points and sort of unpacking what that is, for each person. I think it's unique to their own experience and what they are subjected to. But I think it's probably true to all of us in so many ways. It's programming across the board, just more intense in certain areres. Yeah.
And that's so important, because I know when we look at things like the bite model was created for people to rate cults. So if you scored high, if your organization or community scored high on the bite model, then it was most likely be categorized as a cult.
But who would use this bite model? Is this corporate companies? Is it like...
No, it's more like therapists who help people with deprogramming. So it's more like because the guy who created the bite model was actually in a cult. I think he was in the Moonies, if I'm not mistaken, that cult. And I think he's the one that created this bite model. And when I first, believe it or not, guys, even before I was on YouTube, I would study like stuff just for shits and giggles, just because I was curious. And I went through a phase where I was studying like the Jehovah's Witnesses, not because I wanted to become one, but because I was curious as to what they believe. And through my research through the Jehovah's Witnesses, I stumbled upon the BITE model. And for a few years now, I've used it because it helps me check myself too, to see where I may be getting a little bit mind controlled into something. And of course, BITE model stands for behavior modification, intelligence, information modification, thought modification, and emotion modification. And I know when we see BITE models like this, the first thing we instantly think is religion. And that's big. Like, that's big, not just in Christianity, but in all the religions. You're going to find sects that are high controlled. We know there are many, many different religions where they're so cut off, they're so controlled that it's most definitely a cult from the outside looking in. But we can also, for the lesser high controlled organizations, we can also see where there is gaslighting, where there is behavior control, where there is information control, thought control, emotion control. And true spirituality is actually about liberation. It's about being able to stand in your sovereignty. And so if you're dealing with any of these factions within your religious organization, spiritual community, whatever, then that's a red flag. But we also see the BITE model. Should we let her? Can you guys hear her scratching on the door? Is that sound coming through? The dog. Make sure that sound was I think she's also playing with an insect, but
no, she's trying to get in the door.
Yeah, just let her in. And bless her heart, she wants to be part of the show. But we also look at we can look at the BITE model too in educational groups. We can look at the BITE model when it comes to the media, especially with what's been happening over these last couple of years, right? If we look at what the media has done, I'm careful what I say, to the people who are on the other side of this reality we're living in. Everything, your family members, your friends that are buying into the story of the media, they all fall under the BITE model. So this is why the BITE model is so helpful. And for me, I think I can speak for all of us when I say that this whole Great Awakening is literally a personal spiritual awakening for all of us. You know, it is the micro. Yeah. So we need, I was talking to Stephanie this morning, like, the beautiful thing about teachers is that good teachers will help you see where you can't see things for yourself. So they'll help you see where you are maybe being, not being able to like focus on your own stuff, like where you're kind of escaping and you're kind of, so but the BITE model can act like that because it can help reel you back in to see where maybe you are having your mind manipulated a little bit, you're having your behavior manipulated. I mean, think about it this way for everybody watching. How many of you guys have family and friends who believe that the sickness was so intense that they won't allow you in their lives now because you don't have. How many of us have that? That's behavior control. That's behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. That fits under all of that. And so we see it, and it's easy to see it in the big stuff. It's easy to see it with like the big cults, like the Koreshians, or these big Heaven's Gate, these big groups. It's easy to see it in the media, but when it gets where it gets more harder is in the smaller groups, in the everyday churches, and the everyday temples, and the everyday. And again, it's not just Christianity; it's Islam, it's Buddhism, it's any type of organization is going to perhaps have this. It's in the science community, it's in the education community. So, do you guys want to dive into it again? And
yeah.
So yeah, please.
We'll go into it, and then what we'll do is we can share some examples just to kind of help everyone understand this. So we'll start with behavior control.
And can I share screen so I can pull this up for the audience to see as well? Is it possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. I think you can just go on to it.
Let's see here.
Please me the expert.
If I, how to further than me. Oh, here we go. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Sorry, I'm talking to myself as I do this.
As Abby is speaking to herself at home.
Behind you. So Stephanie, when I pull this up, does that have to be on the screen too?
No, they control if it's seeing.
So how do we get that too?
Can you guys see the screen with the BITE model on it?
No.
You haven't shared anything yet.
So go back to the screen.
Go back to the screen.
Go back to StreamYard. Okay. Press cancel. Go to share screen. Go to share screen. Go to share screen. Then you're going to go to window. Go there.
Perfect.
Share. Wow, I figured that out.
You did. I'm like, how do I do this? Now the audience knows how to do it.
I'm actually going to read this from my phone just because I'm blind without my glasses here. So we'll start off with the behavior control. So I'm just going to read it, and then we can come up with some examples to kind of share with everybody so we all get some sort of gist on what this looks like rather than just reading it off. So promoting dependence and obedience, modifying your behavior with rewards and punishment. So it's like that heaven or hell kind of type of,
or even with like this thingy, like being able to
if you can
travel the world, if
Yeah.
you can work or not, if you can feed your family or not.
Dictate where and with whom you live. So for instance, I'll use myself as an example. When I was in the church, I was told I couldn't live with my son's father, even though we shared a son together when we were raising him. I mean, it was a very toxic household, but because of he was a narcissist, but that's besides the point. Let's say he was loving, and I'm trying to raise my son with his father who is loving, let's say. You know, they tried to control that. I was not allowed to join worship team because of that in the church. Restrict and control sexuality. So I think we know what that means. You know, I don't have to go too far
Well,
into
there's
that.
even more to that. You know, of course, where we think of the big picture, like we know in the Christian organization. A lot of religions, they frown upon like homosexuality, which I don't see any difference between.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. That for me, as a healthy-minded person, that love is love. But let's go even deeper. Let's talk about heterosexuality within these high control groups. What you just said. You can't live with your son's father. You can't do this. You can't. We look at some of these, like if you look at the more extreme Christian groups here in America, like the that work off the IBLP, the Institute of Basic Life Principles, the more quiverful groups. I mean, we just saw Josh Duggar get arrested. He's a reality show star here in America. His family is quiverful. They're super, super, super fundamentalist. He just got arrested and thrown in federal prison because he had inappropriate videos of children, if you know what I mean. And people say it's because he grew up in the IBLP. They're not taught about sexuality. And these kids they court, they don't date, they court at 18. And at 18, they're marrying each other and they don't believe in divorce. They can't get divorced. Hell, at 18, your hormones are so crazy, you'll marry any guy that walks by just to be able to have sex. And then all of a sudden you're in a relationship, a lifelong commitment. You know, so that's what they're talking in that sense too. It's not just the big picture of homosexuality or heterosexuality. It's also even smaller than that too, where they make you feel like, I mean, in the United States, when Stephanie and I were kids, I don't know if this was big in other countries, but they had this thing called purity culture here in the United States when we were children. And it was through the Protestant Christian churches where girls would wear these rings, these like it's kind of creepy. These like teenage girls would get these purity rings. That meant that they belonged to their father. The ring said they belonged to their father, as creepy as that is, until the day that they got married. And so they would say pure until they got married. Mm-hmm. Well, I have spent so much time watching interviews of what has happened and as a result of this purity culture, especially for girls. They would tell you the story that your sexuality is like bubble gum. So if you pass the bubble gum around and it gets chewed up by all these people, that nasty piece of bubble gum is what you're going to hand your husband one day. You don't. And so they compare a girl's worth, her whole value is based on her purity. So that's using sexuality to modify your behavior. It's disgusting. Yeah. It's totally. And they say it's for boys too, but it's not really. It's not really for boys. It's mostly for girls. So
it has a very different connotation to boys. Let's face facts. I mean, no matter which way we try and skin this cat, it's always going to be the same result at the end for now, anyway, because it's really that's the way the conditioning has gone. I mean, if we just look back as far as, let's say, going back to the turn of the century, just in the Tartaria stuff we've been doing, and we see how the woman was shamed The
Yeah.
single mothers were shamed for having babies, and their children were literally taken away because they supposedly couldn't afford to keep them, or if a woman had an affair, or if the child was the baby was, let's say, from another father, stuff like that. So all of that stuff, women have always been shamed for that, and had to walk around with big red A's on their chest at some point, saying they're an adulteress, and being stoned. So this kind of nonsense has been inflicted upon our society for many, many centuries already.
Yeah.
I think it's part of the suppression of the femininity, the intuition, because femininity and intuition, and that goes hand in hand. The whole feminine, water, intuitive, creative, subtle body energy that we so need. It's the glue that binds everything together. It's the sweetness in life,
Yeah.
You can see it as a structure, an orange, beautiful in its structure, but if it doesn't have the juice or the sweetness in it, it's horrible. So it would be the sort of equation around that. So we've been subjected to this for so long, and we really have to unravel that programming, because it's been used in every possible denomination. It's disgusting to be married to your father, sis.
I know, it's so disgusting. I never did that. I never did that growing up, but I knew about purity culture, and when in my own, like I said, I believe it or not, guys, I really like to research just for shits and giggles. Half the stuff I research and look into, I don't even present on my shows. I've been doing this for a long time, and I listen to these interviews, and like, this is disgusting. Like, some churches would have like purity dances where you go and you pledge to be your father's property. And let's think about that too. As a woman, you're not even considered a human being at that point. You're someone's property. And the highest IQ ever recorded was that of a woman. But women have been conditioned to not step out of line. And that's the thing about the behavior control too. So what I like to ask myself, and what other people watching can perhaps ask themselves, if they're in a culture or a situation where their behavior, where they can step back and settle into that and be like, is my behavior, my true and honest behavior? Or am I modifying myself to meet somebody else's standards or desires? That's when you start to take it. Because there's always going to be psychopaths out there. There's always going to be people that want to try to control you. That's always going to, and controlling people aren't necessarily always psychopaths, but cult leaders typically are. But your power lies in you being able to put that boundary up and say, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to change my behavior because you demand a certain particular moral code or whatever from me. And it's a lot. I mean, I'm reading through the Magdalene manuscript on my channel, and it gets a lot into like the tantric sects and stuff like that. And I find myself, like, even at 39, like, reading stuff and then going, I still have stuff to work through with that and my parents were not like super, you can't do this until, they were not like extreme like that, but just in society in general, that behavior control. And I see it, the triggers in me sometimes.
Right. I actually have to comment here. Sorry to interject here, because I'm looking at God's Girl's comments here. And Morné, this lady, firstly, there's nothing wrong with being pure if you choose to not have sex. Now, please don't turn this God's Girl into something that it's not.
Yeah.
This has got nothing to do. If a woman chooses to not have sex, that is her choice, okay? But the point we're making is that we are absolutely past the stage of being subjected to somebody being under their thumb and being made to feel like, as a sexual being, you are now somehow tarnished, or you've belittled or shamed or something like that. It's everyone's personal choice. Seems more like they're heading towards a feminist movement. No, this has got nothing to do with the feminist movement. It's about understanding our power as women, as people, as men. We are showing how Women have been shamed over and over and over again because they dare to want to have sex with someone, or they dare to love someone that they shouldn't, according to society. So please don't turn this into something it's not. Okay, it was sounding different. It wasn't sounding different at all.
No.
And I would love to have you in the chat room here right now, because I'll take you on about that. You need to listen differently. That's not what we were saying. These are the types of comments that get things stirred up. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take you on head on with this, because that's not what we're saying. You start nonsense like this, it's not what we're saying. Please go back and re-listen to what we were saying at the beginning of the conversation. It's about the conditioning that everyone, do you think it's okay for a man to think a woman is less than? It's not. He's being lied to as well, to think that that is the case. We need to come back and understand that everything is balanced. So one cannot effectively operate without the other as an equal partner. One gives something different to the other all the time. That's how we balance each other out. Nothing to do with feminist movements here. So please, let's just get that straight. Thank you.
And if somebody thinks I'm talking about the feminist movement because I said the highest recorded IQ was out of a woman, I'm going to tell you that's your programming. That's the BITE model in you. That's showing that somebody else has made you view women as less than. I don't consider myself to be a feminist. And I'm also not a slut. Do I sleep around stuff? No.
She might joke about
I joke about it.
But no.
I'm very much so, and I'm not telling people to go and sleep. This whole polarization, we're not looking for extremes.
That's somebody that's using their own perception from their own cult-like behavior.
Yeah, that's cult-like
behavior. They're not listening. They're not listening to the fact that we're talking actually not about sex. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about someone believing that they are higher up than you and own you.
And that's a
control mechanism. We're not talking about the actual act of sex.
And part of behavioral control as we're going through is sexuality. And I will tell you, I am not a parent, but I have 2 nieces. And I don't see the value of them based on their sexuality. That's disgusting. May and Jacqueline Tidwell have so much more to offer this world than just their sexuality. But what a lot of cults do is they treat women like they're breeders. And that's it. And that the only man that can touch them is their husband, when that should be the woman's choice. It should be you should be empowered. And if you think your daughter is only valuable because of her sexuality, then my friend, you have been conditioned by a cult. And I'm here to tell you, your daughter is worth more than that.
I had a family member, a distant family member, who was married to a pastor, and they ran their church out of their home. And this woman, which was my mom's cousin, had 9 children. She didn't want 9 children. But her husband would take a stick, and he was a pastor, a Christian pastor, and he would slam the stick. And no matter what she was in the middle, that meant she had to submit to him and have sex with him. And guess what happened? She died of colon cancer because that energy, that trauma was created.
Absolutely. And you're going to find that all the time. I mean, again, as a healer, we look at the trauma that's stored within the body at cellular level, and you always got to look at which part of the body is being traumatized or affected. And every part of the body speaks to you. So it's exactly what you're saying. Colon cancer is literally that, the inability to let that trauma go and to hold on to that stuff. Literally, I mean, we know what the colon's about. I don't want to get graphic here, but it's the same thing energetically. So that energy was held on to. And instead of releasing it and eliminating the energy, she couldn't because she was too traumatized. She was, and that's what's been happening for centuries. And it's not just in one way. It happens in many, many, many ways. But definitely, when we're looking at the divine feminine, and it's got very little to do, although yes, but when you look behind the scenes with men and women, it's masculine and feminine energies. And it's not, and in the physical world, we manifest the masculine as male and the feminine as women.
Yeah.
But in the, energetically, there's not, the masculine is the assertive energy and the feminine is the subtle receptive energy. That's all it is. So when those two work together, asserting, holding back, quantifying, qualifying, recalibrating, and then moving forward again, that's how it works together. So when we understand that about ourselves, there's no issue around anything else. We'll see it. But because human beings are so obsessed with money, power, sex, it's translated as that all the time. So that whole divine feminine consciousness, your intuitive superpower that men too have, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just women who have that. And we, as much as what we need to learn how to access that, so do men. Both of us do. And when we create these inequalities in the world between male and female, yin and yang, it's often manifested in the sexual realm. So the sexual power, the monetization of that, the control of that, the suppression of that. So it's good for us all to understand these things. When we are in our power as a human being, male or female, you're not going to be harassed by anything.
Yeah.
But in our process of learning about it, we have to see what is happening. We have to see where it exists, how it exists, how the power around that is enforced, so that we have the knowledge and the understanding, if we are in that position especially, or know someone in that position, that we can assist and get ourselves out of that position by using our God-given power that is our gift within. That's the way I see these things. So
yeah, me too. And I will say, for the person that doesn't like us saying that purity culture is bad, I would actually encourage you to go research Puritans. And you can be, and finding your sovereignty. If you don't want to have sex, you don't have to have sex. Like, that's fine. But it is that untangling of the webs. What is that Shakespearean quote? Oh, the tangled webs we weave when first we practice to deceive. When we're putting value on something that is not our full picture as a human, and we see, if we're talking about the BITE model, we see how far, even in the quote unquote truther community, we have this BITE. We have people doing mind control manipulation big time.
I see more people using these tactics even in the truther movement than I don't.
Yeah, same.
And that's actually a big reason why I stopped. The moment I started to feel any type of intuitiveness toward, like, this is not right, I stopped watching it. Mm-hmm. Even before I had a YouTube channel, because the thing is, the last thing we should be doing is fear mongering, because then you're stooping down to the level of the controllers.
Yeah, and that's what the BITE model shows you that. And so, we have this extreme. People get mad at us when we present our research on Osiris in the obelisk, because they've been conditioned by thought control, by infiltrators into the truther music, that's Osiris's wiener.
And the thing is, it's like, the controllers used the symbolism of the Eye of Horus. They used the symbolism of the pyramid. They used the symbolism of all of that. But we really need to also take a look at where did they get it from? Because Satan didn't create it. Lucifer didn't create it. So where did that come from? So instead of just assuming because a truther told you, we really need to do our own research.
And that's what the BITE model's gone. And that's why we want to do it again in part 2, because this is so helpful for every person who's trying to find their sovereignty, who's trying to find this great awakening, so that you're not going from one cult to another cult. Because a lot of people went from watching MSNBC, CNN, to then watching truthers. And so they're switching one modality. We love that you watch us. But I know you guys, I want everyone to have their own independent thought and have their own independent research. And so we talk about the purity stuff. If you want to be pure, that's totally fine. But I'm going to ask you, don't raise your daughters to think that their whole value is based upon whether they're a virgin or not.
Yeah.
Because that's behavior control, and that's abuse to your children. I'm not a slut. I've never been a slut. I don't sleep around.
Yeah. And also for guys, I mean, and for the men, you raise your boy to be like boy, so they can lose their purity. Well, to be a boy, it's not about your virginity, so it's not good for men to also be raised like that, because men are sacred as well,
Yeah. Why not sit down and talk to your children about sex being very intimate and being a very serious thing and sacred, and explain it to them that way so that they know the power that lies within their body, right? And that they're not afraid to talk about this.
That you're exchanging
energy
karma
with someone.
That might trigger a young girl to be very, very careful and cautious of who she decides to exchange that energy with. Instead of, you're condemned to hell if you lose your virginity before marriage. Because I underwent that with the church myself, and I was demonized because of that. And it is extremely harmful.
Extremely.
For anyone.
And let's be very clear. Marriage itself is an institutionalized practice by the controllers. Your marriage license is owned by the state. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, marriage when you're in a committed relationship with someone that you have in your heart and soul have committed to them monogamously, to share that intimacy with them, to share that life with them. If you're doing that, you don't need a freaking piece of paper to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Why
do you want to get the government involved?
Exactly.
And it costs money.
Mm-hmm.
It costs money to get that license. It's not like you just get to say, "Oh, I get married," and so and be done with it. No, and then I won't even get into the whole ritualistic part of it all. But I mean, the license alone. Why do you have to pay money to the government to say that you can get married? Because I couldn't hire a wedding officiant if I didn't have that paid license.
Yeah. So we have to start unraveling what is, if somebody is living in a house with their partner, and they've lived with their partner for years in a monogamous relationship, they're happy, that behavior control is then condemning them because they don't have that piece of paper saying that they're married, but yet they're in a functioning, healthy relationship where they respect each other, they don't cheat on each other. That's more of a godly marriage than the marriage down the street where there's affairs happening, there's abuse happening. So we have to get, and that's why, again, the BITE model is so important, because we have to start thinking about this stuff logically. God did not create the government institution of marriage. The devil mimicked what God created in our love and our ability to love and share life with somebody, and made it.
Unity, yes.
Yeah.
The word unity has been mimicked, because when God, when we talk about our unity with each other, our unity with nature, our unity with God, that's the word that they've mimicked and taken it as to your unity that knots you together. I always say, when we look at what's happening now, take everything you've been taught and turn it upside down. Just turn it upside down, because God creates, the Luciferians emulate. So they've literally taken everything and they've tried to put it into reverse or invert it. So all you got to do, whatever you've been taught around education, banking, race, culture, sexuality, sensuality, partnerships, intimate relationships, whatever, turn it upside down. Yeah. Turn it upside down. No one needs to tell you that as a child of 9 years old, you don't have sex. As a child of 9 years old, you don't even think about that actually in a normal condition. So my point is, when society does what they do, and if we just look at the whole way the world is going right now, we're being subjected to the BITE model every single day. And yet our false gods and goddesses, the media kings and queens and the actors and actresses and the models and what have you, are now portraying this very different lifestyle. I mean, when I was young, people like that were sluts. Yeah. Nowadays, it's the done thing. The more skin you show, and the more, it's the opposite of what it was. So somewhere along the line, there's the middle ground we have to find, So my point is, just let nature and all of us just develop naturally. Let us all get to that point of understanding what that is. And from that place, we develop, we bloom, we grow naturally. And we, You know, we're coming from that spiritual place that guides us imminently anyway. It's not through your minister at the church or your pastor or your sadistic preacher or your teacher at school or something. It's done through a very different modality, which is love. You know, everything we've been taught is a lie. Everything we've been taught is a lie.
And with the marriage too, like we were saying with the behavior control, how many people, and it's not just the Christian faith that does this, it's a lot of faiths out there. How many people do you know, or stories you've heard of women who are being absolutely abused at home? They go to their church or their religious institution for help and they're told not to get a divorce.
Not allowed to get a divorce, no.
Do you
because
really think a loving God would ever want somebody to stay in that situation when they want out?
Yeah, exactly.
I was told that when I got pregnant out of wedlock at the age of 19, which I was barely an adult at that point, okay, that if I did not marry my son's father, I was not an honest woman. So I needed to be an honest woman and marry an abuser. So I didn't listen. I never married the man, but I could have, and it could have ended up bad. And then you look at it where if you're trapped in an abusive marriage because your institution is telling you had to get married and such, then to get out of that marriage is going to cost you a ton of money, which you probably don't have because your money's probably already being manipulated and controlled anyways. So you're trapped. And if you have kids, forget about it. You're trapped. You're really trapped. You can't run and hide legally and bring your kids with you because then that's labeled kidnapping. You know what I mean? So there are so many different traps by the controllers by using just marriage alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that modifies the behavior. You know, you often think if you were left to your own, sorry, there's a dog behind me, guys. So that's why you see me moving.
My dog is very, very attached to Bryce.
I've got a dog on me. So
she's half on the couch and half not.
You guys see me moving around. That's what's happening. And so all we're seeing with the BITE model now is to take that sovereignty back, to take your body back. You know, we see that with this thing. You know, it's my body, my choice goes out the window. No, it's your body, it's your choice. And explaining to people, you know, when you're raising your kids, explaining to them the what can happen when you do certain things, but allowing them to make those decisions. And I will say, what you kind of triggered me when you said something, and I've never had a child, but I've seen this happen before with religious institutions. When a child is born out of wedlock, somehow the religious institution has the audacity to think that they can label that that child's life as valuable or not.
Yeah, a bastard child.
A bastard. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Any child that's born is a child of God. It doesn't matter in what situation. They were put here on this earth by God. What right does the organization have to say whether that child is valuable or not? Because I guarantee you, if I get pregnant, that kid's going to be born out of wedlock. So, and
exactly.
That child is very much wanted and very much loved and very much a creation of God. So, what right, if you're watching and you think that the church has that right, I just beg you to consider you're in a cult. You're in a cult. All right. So what else under behavior?
So
control?
We have the control of clothing and hairstyle. So what that is going to entail is, I can give an example. So we have a denomination under the Pentecostal denomination, and there's a few different Pentecostal denominations, but this one is by far the more strict one. I want to say this is the Pentecostal denomination of America. I could be wrong on that, but their hair has to be down to their ass, pretty much, never cut, and it has to always be up. They always have to wear a skirt. They can't wear pants. They can't wear shorts. Their blouse has to come up past a certain point, so like you can't show any skin at all. And I know the Jehovah's Witnesses also have some sort of, I believe they have some sort of strict rules toward what you wear.
Conservative Baptist too.
Very, very, yeah. It even goes back to the Puritans, who were not allowed to even wear colors. And the Puritans are supposedly, what the narrative teaches us, is they're the Christians who were getting away from religious persecution. I don't believe in that at this point whatsoever. I think you flip-flop that, like we were saying, turn it upside down.
Yeah.
But supposedly they were not allowed to dress in colors, or they were deemed a witch. So they had to wear browns and black, and they had to dress very, very, very modest. Could not show any type of skin at all. So that's a form of
behavior control. I'm telling you, listen, control. I've talked about this because there are a lot of, with the IBLP, with these very conservative Baptist groups, the political groups here in the United States, you see that still, the long skirts. They wear long. What I'm wearing right now would be considered very slutty, and it's for me, this is very conservative, right? This is not. But I was saying this too. So when we look at, when we're controlling someone's behavior by how they dress and how they present themselves to the world, like growing up for me, my parents were conservative Christians. However, we were allowed to wear bikinis, we wore shorts, we wore tank tops, we hung out at the pool with our guy friends. And what tends to happen is when that dress modification isn't controlled, you get used to seeing body parts, not naked, but so you don't have that extreme intensity like what we were talking about with Josh Duggar being arrested for child stuff.
When you're able to, there's so many different, cultures out there that don't really wear a lot of clothing. And I'm sure those men are not googly-eyed at, a pair of breasts or whatnot, because that's just their culture. They're used to seeing it. But when you take something away from somebody so much, it's like telling your child they can't do something. But let's say they're old enough, and I'm saying this as I have a teenager, so I would know this. Telling them they can't do something, but when you leave the house, leave them home alone for say an hour because you're going grocery shopping and they're old enough to stay home, they might sneak up and do it, because if you're like a Nazi parent kind of a thing, they'll rebel. They're going to rebel. So what happens is, if you are so strict about it, of course you're going to get men and both, women who rebel, and they see that, and it's like, oh my God. You know what I mean? The
extreme opposite direction, because your whole understanding has been controlled. The behavior has been controlled.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do we want to go off of this more? Do we want to go to the next one?
What do you think?
So we can go to the next one. So that would be regulate how much you eat and drink. I haven't necessarily seen this one too much in the church, but there's certain. There is. If you look at the deep quiverful churches and the extreme Baptist churches, you can actually look online and listen to testimonies. There are some churches that teach that the man is such the head of the house that the woman can't even eat unless the man tells her she can eat and he tells her what to eat. And I will say, I was telling you this yesterday, Stephanie, it's funny in India. Like if I'm by myself in India and I go to a restaurant or something, they'll talk to me. The rickshaw drivers will talk to me. But if I have a man in the car with me, or at the restaurant with me, like at the restaurant, for example, they will bring the menu to the man, and culturally he's supposed to order for me. And so that's that food control. I will say I've been to Indian hospital twice in my travels back and forth to India. The first time was for a kidney infection, and that was the first time I had registered in that hospital, and I could not, in this particular hospital, I could not register myself. I either had to have my father register me, my brother register me, or my husband register me. And so I had to get my best friend, Chris, who is very gay. He had to be my husband because he's Asian. So obviously he's not my brother or my father. So we had to pretend he was my husband just so I could get myself registered into the hospital. And it was the most hysterical thing in the world, because he kept saying, I cannot believe they're buying this shit. That he was like, I should tell them you're the one that deals with the bugs in the house, not me. So and when I went to go check out of the hospital, when I was all situated, I had to give Chris my money to pay them because he was the man. And so we see that kind of, with the food control, you do see these kind of controlling stuff happening in other cultures too. It's not just the Christian culture, but I do know within the quiverful movement and the IBLP that is common, where men will control what will tell a woman. And think about it, if we look at the chakra system, how debilitating and damaging is that to your right to be here if somebody else is telling you when you can and cannot eat? One of the most basic, primitive necessities of a human being is food. And somebody else controls that.
And tells you what to eat.
And what to eat. So if you're allergic, like I'm very Vata, so I cannot eat broccoli. Everybody saw in the video what happens when I eat grapes. So there's certain foods that if I eat them, I will have an allergic reaction. Could you imagine having a husband that's forcing you to eat foods that are horrific for your system and you can't do anything about it? Like, holy crap. Holy crap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you want me to go further into that, Shanti, or we're good to go on to the next one?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is actually really important too, because it doesn't, this is seen even outside of the church. Deprive you of 7 to 9 hours of sleep. You see a lot of this in actually the controllers and how they manipulate people to become part of the club. And it's that the MK, and then you guys know what I'm talking about after ULTRA. I can't spell in my head, so I don't know if that's a trigger word on YouTube, but that's where they deprive you of so much sleep that they literally can start to mind control you. So that's a huge part of it. That's a lot of times what they use in these cults. I remember I had gone to a church and we had this seminar that lasted, I think, 2 to 3 days, and you were up all night and all day praying. So, I mean, after a while, sleep deprivation, you become very delirious. You start to think things that, are not logical, and they start to really twist things for you, and they really can start to twist your brain into thinking whatever.
And how many corporations do this? They're not even religious organizations.
Yeah.
When we were kids, you worked 9 to 5, you had the weekends off. That doesn't happen now. People are at the office at 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Sometimes they don't leave till 10.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep deprivation.
And I mean, and there's certain things going on even in the truther community. Well, I'm not going to go into, I'm not going to go into deep about it, but there are certain groups in this truther community that are using this particular tactic to start off with, besides the luring in of and using religious doctrination to think that certain things about Jesus. And I'm not going to go too far into it. If you're following certain people, you know exactly what I'm talking about, so I'm being very careful. But I have spoken to people who know specifically that there's a specific couple groups that are keeping people up so late at night that they're able to get controlled completely at that point in time.
I mean, I'm pretty good with there is a group that's doing that here in America. That's a truther group. Then obviously that has to happen when you're all in the same community together. So it is a community where they're all kind of traveling around together. We've spoken to some people who have broken free of that, and they're using no sleep. But even Stephanie, the last few days, we've been so busy and going so strong, we haven't been getting much sleep. And yesterday we felt it. We felt it yesterday, didn't we? We were like both like we've been hit by a Mac.
We worked out, but we did it much later in the day. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say sorry to interrupt you there, Steph. But just talking about that sleep deprivation. Every SRA survivor or overcomer you speak to, they've used those tactics. I mean, if you look at just Jessie, for example, I mean, one of the first things, they would wake her up and they would have her up until 2, 3 in the morning, and she'd literally have an hour or 2 sleep at night, and they would wake her up at 5 again to do whatever. So they literally, she was operating on, I would imagine that would have been the norm. 1 to 2 hours of sleep a night.
That's what they do for the rock stars. That's what I remember watching a documentary on NSYNC, and I'm thinking to myself, these guys never get any sleep, even before I knew any of this stuff. So they use this on those who are in the music industry or in the movie star industry when they're first coming into it, because that's when that group was very, very young. And so they're getting nothing, and then they're being worked like dogs. And so, you're going to go delirious. You're not going to think straight. You cognitively cannot think straight. Yeah. Your gas tank is on empty, and then you crash.
And this is a big one. So, like, some of these other things are very kind of gray, and people can manipulate them. But the no sleep, if you're in a church or any type of community, that's doing that to you, they're not going to come right out and say, hey, we're going to deprive you of sleep. No, it's going to look like you staying at youth group at the church until 11 o'clock at night, and then you're expected to return the next morning at 6 a.m. to do a morning prayer. And if you don't show up for that prayer, then you must not love God. It's going to look like that.
Yeah.
They're not going to come out and say, we're going to deprive. They're going to manipulate you into thinking that what they're doing is normal. And so that's a big red flag. If you're tired and you've been run ragged by a community, that is a huge red flag for a cult. Huge. Because we've all been tired. You know, when you're tired and you don't get enough sleep, your mind's not functioning properly. You're not making rational cognitive decisions when you're that tired. The body needs, at this point in the game, who knows what's going to happen once we go into fourth density, but we need sleep. Our body needs, animals need, like dogs sleep like 20 hours a day. You know, like we need sleep. And so,
and at that point in time, you can easily get in a cult type situation. At that point in the game, you can easily get slip drugs to continue to keep you going, and then get sleep deprived again and slip drugs again. And that is happening. And that is happening in that truther group. And I know that for a fact. So, I mean, this is something to be very, very cautious of. If you are in a group like this, you need to be very, very cautious of that. It's very toxic.
Yeah.
So the next one is exploit you financially. And I know this one first and foremost in my own personal life. Churches were always diving into my personal finances, always. And it was the most uncomfortable thing. And I couldn't join a church unless I tithed my 10%. And I was told, well, if you're not tithing your 10% of your income, then God is going to look at you and judge you for that. Because that's in the Bible. That's in the Bible. That's set in stone. It's gospel, and that's the way it is. Funny part is my intuition always thought that was BS anyway, so I hardly ever did. But
what the hell? I can't even imagine that someone would try and use those manipulation tactics. God's going to judge you.
And if you're not making a lot of money, and I mean, I grew up in a family that was well off enough. I never needed for anything. I was very blessed in that aspect of my childhood. As an adult, being a single mom very early on, and not really ever having any support system to help when I first became pregnant and then going into my son's early childhood, that was embarrassing for me because I struggled. I still struggle. Like, even when I took my trip to go see Bryce, it was on bare minimum. It was on bare, I even worried that I wasn't going to have enough to get back home. So you see where I'm going with that. It was so embarrassing to have someone diving into my finances like that and being like, well, I guess you can't join the church because you can't tithe your 10%. Very embarrassing.
Well, we have it's kind of this new thing here in America called the prosperity gospel. Have you guys heard of that? Yeah. It is, if your church is preaching the prosperity gospel, first thing you need to do is research all those pastors who are preaching the prosperity gospel. They're all part of the club.
Yeah.
Second of all, the prosperity gospel basically says it's like a pyramid scheme. The more you give to the church, the more you're going to get back from God. So they're using spiritual manipulation, which we can talk when we get deeper into this more. We'll talk more about what spiritual manipulation looks like. Yeah. But so it's like you got to give 10%, 20%. It's never going to be enough. But the more you give to our church, God's going to double it and give it back to you.
And mathematically, does that really logically make any sense at all? No. Because money grows on trees, didn't you know? So, I mean, I had one pastor come to my church, and he was telling us his personal story, how he gave 10%. Him and his wife were so poor. He gave 10%, and he got more back. He got tenfold back. Then he gave 20. Then he gave 30. And so up to 90% of his income, by the way. And now he's making a lot of money. So mathematically speaking, and I always question that person. I'm like, that doesn't sound really right mathematically. And I suck at math. I was horrible in math. But to the logic mind, it's like counting money.
It's common sense. She's not adding
Come
up.
on.
He got rich because all those people were donating for the prosperity. The prosperity gospel is literally keeping the pastors rich.
And get this. So at the very end of that service, you gave your 10% tithing. However, they passed the bowl around again to give another 10% to him.
That's how he got rich.
As Bryce says, Riddle me that, Batman.
Riddle me that, Batman. That's how I'd be sitting there going, that's how he got rich. God didn't give him that money. Y'all gave him the money. You
That's insane, actually. I mean, wow. No. Enough of that nonsense.
Yeah, so I would really, if you're, that's big in evangelical churches here in America, like the big Protestant, especially the mega churches. Y'all know what we're talking about, those big mega with those big preachers.
ODYSEE uses that all so badly. Yeah.
And it's tricking you into thinking, so if you don't give enough money and you don't get money back, then you're bad. You're not giving enough. And so that's another cult mentality. So I beg you, I really hope that people listening understand just a very fundamental idea. God loves you regardless of what's in your bank account.
Yeah. I was also told too that if you didn't pay back all your debt, that you were going to have to sit in front of God one day at the day of judgment when you die. And if you were still in debt, that's not good.
You still had a credit card balance.
Yeah, you still had a credit card
balance.
Why
you couldn't make enough money to pay off your credit card balance.
That's what hit me, like, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong here. So these are the things I personally went through. Luckily, that's a portion of it where I kind of called BS on it, and that really didn't hold enough on me. But yeah, I mean, it really does ruin and mess with people.
It has a hold on a lot. There are a lot of really good people out there that think that they're not prosperous because they're not donating enough to the church. They're not. God doesn't care about your MasterCard.
No.
That's not, this is not, and money is man-made.
The Rothschilds do. The master.
The Lucifer does. Lucifer wants your money, but the banking families want it. But God, yeah, that's not, no matter how rich or poor I've ever been, I've never felt God leave me at any time.
I have to tell you, the more you let that stuff go, the external stuff, and please, I understand we all need our basic needs taken care of, roof over our head, food in our belly, warm bed at night, of course. And, quite frankly, I'm the kind of person, I don't mind, I could only have one set of linen, but it must be Egyptian cotton, okay? So, so less for me is more, but I like the quality or the quality of what that is. You know what I'm saying? So no one is saying that you shouldn't enjoy your physical experience and enjoy spending your money and enjoy, earning and just enjoying what you've created and what you've earned for yourself, But it's such I think if we can just get out of the money scenario, because money has been something that is so indoctrinated into us, and we understand what true abundance is. For me, true abundance truly came when I let go of attachment, when I sold my car, when I sold most of my household goods, when I scaled down. And remember, I've been a single mother my whole life, so I've needed to have a household of stuff, to support, see my child through, all of that through the years. So I'm used to having my stable base type thing. But the best thing I ever did was let that all go. I just gave up attachment, and make no mistake, I like nice things, but I'm not attached to them.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend my money on the things that for status, that's long ago not important to me.
That doesn't bring you.
I love Levi jeans, and you bet I'm going to go and, instead of buying 3 pairs of Mr. Price jeans, I'm going to go and buy 1 pair of Levi jeans.
Yeah.
Because I love it. They sit well, they feel good, that sort of thing. So I'll rather have the quality. And for me, quality of life is so important. To live at the coast, to have my nature with me, to be able to be free to come and go as I please. That for me is being in my power, where I don't answer to another. I've understood that I can survive on my own. I can let go of all attachment, and I will come back and I will trust that you better believe everything I need is waiting for me. So that's what I'm saying, when we get out of that matrix thinking, because what this is, the BITE model, it's all matrix thinking.
Yeah.
It's all matrix thinking. Different layers of the matrix for sure, but matrix thinking nonetheless. We, when we live in harmony with our love and our truth, and when we do what we love and we love what we do, money will follow you. That's the thing. Around every corner, you are provided for, and that's the beauty of freedom, personal freedom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a minimalist as well. I live in a small apartment. I don't have a lot of clothes. But that to me, I feel more liberation when I don't have, my
exactly.
And that might be just traveling so much to India and living, the yoga stuff, that might be it's what's rubbed off on me. But absolutely, and I agree with you, Shanti. God has always, the opposite of what prosperity gospel teaches, actually. In times of struggle, I mean, we had this happen a couple of nights ago. I have had some money stolen from me through my AdSense account, and I've been a little stressed out about it. And I didn't say anything. We did a live show the other night, and I didn't expect any super chats. But I just would want to have fun. And all of a sudden, people started sending in these super chats, and it literally funded our travels. And I put a video out thanking people because I didn't ask them. But that's showing you that, and I'm not donating to any churches at all. So, it just shows you that when you just start to trust in God, trust in the universe versus an organization, your needs will always be met. I promise you, if you're going to a church where there's prosperity gospel being taught, first of all, it's a pyramid scheme. Second of all, God doesn't care about your MasterCard. God doesn't care about your checking account.
God wants you to get rid of that MasterCard, actually, because it's the Rothschild who wants you to have it.
He wants you to slave some money. Like, God's like, I didn't even make up money. Like, I gave you guys gold, and you went and made up money.
But hey, I'll tell you something. While I need that credit card, I will use it.
Yes,
Thank you, Rothschild. Thank you, Rothschild.
I think God gets that when we're like, well, we're still in the Matrix. Got to buy my groceries. Pull that AMX out. Like, because it is what it is. It is what it is.
All right.
Exactly.
We'll have to do a part 3.
We're going to have to do different parts because we're still in the first one.
So the next one.
I didn't think we would do anything less than part 6 or 7, quite honestly.
Okay, so we'll keep on doing this. Even if we got to do it separately than the usual Monday, I don't care. Because this is so important.
So important. This is so important.
The next one is restrict leisure time and activities, like telling you where you can and can't go, telling who you can and can't hang out with.
Can we point out this with schools, with homework and recess now? So when I was a child, we had recess, and we were really little. Kids get to go outside and play. We had like 2 recesses when I was a kid, in the morning and the afternoon, which is super important for kids to be able to go out on the playground and play together. And we had minimal homework, as like maybe one worksheet we would do when we got home. Nowadays, kids are, at least here in America, their recess is getting limited, less and less and less and less.
My son didn't have recess.
No recess, and they have so much homework they're bringing back, so that now children are put in like a cult almost of the educational system, where they're not. Children need to play. Adults need to play.
Actually, this even goes into the workplace. So supposedly by law, you get 2 15-minute breaks and a half an hour lunch break. However, when you truly go into the workforce, you don't get the 15-minute break, and you're lucky to get that half an hour. So what happens? It almost like works like sleep deprivation. You're worked like a flippin' dog to the point of exhaustion, and so
but you're relying on that because that's your job.
And the other thing too is, I read this while I was doing some research on Hillsong Church. I think it was either Hillsong or it was Bethel Church, one of the 2 mega churches. And one of the things I came across in my research was that a lot of the deacons and a lot of the people who volunteered their time for certain events in the church, which was all the time, they'd be worked like a dog. They'd be worked so hard without a break and without pay. And the pastors didn't even talk to them. The pastors had no communication with them, but they were told they had to do a certain thing, and that was their way of showing God that they were giving of their time. And so instead of like an actual ritual sacrifice, it was more or less sacrificing your time
and your energy,
and there's no exchange of energy happening, so you're not even getting paid. when you very well know those churches have enough money to pay those people.
Yeah, because they're doing prosperity gospel.
Exactly. So this was something that there was a major complaint in these churches, especially there was one in Connecticut, in my home state, that the people were starting to like go, something's off here, because they'd be worked like, I think one person even said they worked a 16-hour day with no pay. So
Wow.
but their salvation then depends on it, because their behavior is being modified because they're dangling the carrot of their salvation in front of them. So you guys, like, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
This truther group that's happening, you have to ask permission to go outside of this group. You have to ask their leader, their boss, permission to go anywhere for leisure time. And oftentimes, if you do, you're kicked out of the group. So it's pretty effed up.
And this is
crazy.
That's what I want people to understand. We talk about extreme cases here, but this is happening all around you in your world.
It's not just
the minute there's a hierarchy of something, there's a problem. Yeah. Of course, in any normal situation, you're going to find your leaders. There's always going to be good leaders, and no matter where you are. Just because you're not necessarily a good leader doesn't mean you can't do something. So therefore, leaders are required to propel things forward. But the minute there's a hierarchy, and you can and you can't do this, I advocate transparency. So if you're working with a group or an organization or something, who are your patrons? Who funds this place? Where does your money go to? These are the things, and these are the questions we must start asking as well, because for me, I think it's so important to be able to be transparent about what we're doing, that if we're working, I'm not saying if you've got a business or something that you've got to now tell everyone exactly where every cent is going. That is your responsibility to keep it going. But I think you should be able to be transparent with your employees and say, right, our budget went, X amount of our budget went to that. So we're going to be pushing that for now, and this is the reason why. Then the other, we're holding back on that, and that's the reason why. I think that's the kind of transparency that I think we need in the way going forward. People need to understand, yes, we work hard to earn our money and to create fruition. Hopefully with the way we're moving forward now, it's not going to be as difficult in the future, because we've been also conditioned with poverty consciousness. We know all about that here in Africa. So this whole poverty consciousness narrative that we're being fed all day, every day, is horrible. So we now just turn that around and turn that into abundance consciousness, because abundance is not just money. Money is the last aspect of abundance. You see, they've made it the most important. And when we turn it around and make it the least important. So what's important now? Does that mean suddenly we must throw our money away? No. But we then understand the most important things is connected relationships, because money, they always say it's all about money. Don't take it personally. Don't put your emotions in your relationships, because the first thing you want to be doing is growing and nurturing honest and relationships that are filled with integrity, whether it's personal, whether it's business, whether it's family, whether it's friend, whatever. It's about, you will know when you're in your integrity, and when you meet someone who's within their integrity, there will be no cheating. As simple as that.
Absolutely.
Because we understand the value of being honest. So that's what I'm saying. Everything they tell you to do, turn it around. Boom, upside down. And that, I think, is the first thing we must just wrap our heads around, is that we're going to do it. I'm not sure yet. It's a bit complicated, but hey, I'm going to figure it out. And the minute you actually put energy into saying, God, help me figure this out, please. Boom. There's your answer. Right there and then. You get it?
And the last one, the last part of the behavior part of the BITE model is asking the leader permission to make certain decisions. Again, in certain churches, you have to ask permission you need to ask permission to get married to a certain person.
Yeah, that's true. My church did.
Luckily I went through a pastor who didn't believe in that, but If I chose the other pastor that used to pastor that church, she would have denied me. She would have denied me because I was living with my fiance at the time. So, it's I know a couple. Again, it goes to that truther group. You have to ask permission to leave. You have to ask permission to go visit your family. You have to go ask permission to go get food. You have to ask permission to do anything. And if you don't ask permission, you either get ridiculed really, really badly and even more so abused, or you get kicked out. And then you feel alienated.
And then you don't have your community because they take away your community from you.
Because these organizations, and what they do is they make you feel that they're now your family and that there is nothing out. It goes to almost like a narcissistic relationship where a man or a woman makes you feel like you are nothing and you're not loved without them. These organizations do the exact same thing to you. They make you feel like you have nobody outside of that group of people and that you are nothing without that group of people.
How narcissistic is that? That's the first thing a narcissist does.
Yes.
Whether it's a male or a female narcissist, the first thing a narcissist will do is try and alienate you from your friends and family.
Yeah. Well, what's a cult really is just like being in a narcissistic relationship, except it's a group of people. It's not just one person. And it's not just a one-person romantic relationship. You're literally with a group of other people who are either manipulating you and with a group of people who are also manipulated as well and going with the crowd.
And that's what I mean. Ask yourself, because I've been in narcissistic situations before. If you are with somebody, an employer, a group, a person, and all of a sudden you find that your friends and family, you can't go see your friends and family. I mean, look what the media has done to our friends and family who they can't come see us. They've isolated them. They can't be. They have been brainwashed. Their behavior has been controlled to the point where they can't be around us because then something will happen. Something bad will happen. And so that's the same. It's all the same thing. It looks different in different situations, but it's all the same thing. And again, that's why I would, in my opinion, I would tell every person to print off the BITE model and put it on your refrigerator just to remind yourself that you have sovereignty. You don't have to fall for these mind tricks. If you know what they are, if you see, it's like magicians that have tricks. When you see the trick, you can't see the magic anymore. When you see the tricks of this control, you won't stand for the control anymore because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Absolutely.
The truth shall set you free.
The truth shall set you free.
Indeed.
100%. But it'll piss you off first.
Yes. It will.
Oh, wow. Ladies and gent, what a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
And as we know, time flies when we're having fun. So that's become our slogan on the show. Time flies when we're having fun. So I'm very happy to have had fun with these three again today. So thanks, guys, so much for joining us. We look forward to next week when we're going to get into the information, right? Is that the information?
Yeah.
So we're probably gonna take a couple of weeks to go through the bites, and we'll do it in bite-sized chunks so that everyone can chew it and digest it very, very well. So look forward to that. Great. Okay, is there anything you guys want to say just before closing, before we say farewell to you? Until Wednesday, Bryce. Bryce, I hope we're on for Wednesday.
Yes. When we get off, we'll look at the time for that. But yes, for sure, because it's my favorite. It's my favorite chapter in all of Tartaria documentary is what we're supposed to cover next. So I guess my closing words would say if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Trust your gut.
If you're
Absolutely.
not allowed if you're not allowed to see your family, if you're not allowed to dress the way you want to, if you're not allowed to eat what you want, then you need to start really reevaluating who you're subjecting yourself to, because your sovereignty is more important than that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No one is coming to save you, not even a husband or a wife.
No, you save yourself.
And how liberating is that?
It's actually, at first it might be a gut punch to you because we're so programmed to think we do need someone to save us.
Yes.
Being trapped into the Christian cult, really, you think Jesus is coming to save you. But that to me was very, very difficult, because it's like, I got to count on somebody to do what now? And when you know that you can only save yourself, that is a very liberating thing. But again, it's a gut punch at first because you're breaking that programming.
I agree with you. And if you just think about fairy tales, actually, waiting for our prince on his white horse or whatever, Prince Charming, or, you know, there's always a prince that rescues the princess and the tiniest little slipper. You know what I mean? If you again look at the Cinderella thing with the tiniest little glass slipper, she was the tiniest, smallest, frailest little girl on the block, was saved and whisked off by the prince, you know? So we condition with these things as well. You know, we condition. It's not just religion.
Yeah.
It's all over the show. Look at our fairy tales. Look at
How
our...
many people are sitting around right now waiting for the Kennedys to do something?
I know
That drives me, that pisses me off.
I always wanted to save the damsels in distress, and I didn't always get the good girls in my life, so I wanted to go find that princess stuck in that tower and stuff.
Where's Rapunzel? Rapunzel, let down your hair. Where is she? Oh man, that's hysterical.
Oh, shame on it. Oh, God.
I was always waiting for a man to come save me, and I ended up with really abusive men. So you would think I'd have learned that the first go around, but it took me quite a few times to figure out that when
you count on saving yourself, you will get stable relationships. You will get stable friends coming your way, and everything will start to really, really level itself out and balance itself out. Now, granted, you will have ups and downs because that's just part of life, but got to get yourself out of these cycles. Very important.
Absolutely. And it really is, you know, I live by the saying that if you want, in order to get what you want, you have to become it first. And on that note, we shall bid you a beautiful Monday, or in our case, evening, farewell. And you two little bustling beauties there, with your little tiny tank tops and hot weather, I hate you. Just so you know.
All sorts of sunburns, slutting it up over here on the East Coast, taking out the Matrix.
Exactly. Anyway, we look forward to getting our son back from you soon as well. So one more month and it's spring. So looking forward to that. Enjoy the sun for the last few weeks that you can, because we ain't giving it back in a hurry, that's for sure. And if you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and a subscribe here on Aquarius Rising Africa. You can find us on Facebook, BitChute, Twitter, Telegram, Rumble, ODYSEE. Please find us on Rumble, guys. We're finding we need to be sending more and more of our sensitive topic interviews over to Rumble. So please go and subscribe to Rumble. We've had a few warnings again and all sorts of things. They've definitely got their beady eye on us here. So I would love it if you guys please just went to Rumble. Find us on Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa as well. In fact, now in a little while, got Carlisle Studer on there. So join me in about 30 minutes and we'll be talking. Carlisle and I always have amazing conversations around health and wellness. She's such a wise little soul. Anyway, look forward to seeing you then. Take good care of yourselves. God bless you all. And we'll see you the next time.
Bye.